Hello and welcome to another Warhammer the Old World video. Today I'm going to be painting Tomb King's skeleton spearmen. As you can see, I have already got them built and attached to strip wood so I can batch paint them. I have undercoated them first with red primer and then give them a heavy spray of white, leaving only the red in the recesses between the rib cages underneath the pelvis, underneath their backs, those kind of areas. First colour up is going to be Pallid Bone from the Army Painter Speedpaints range, and this is going to be used quite extensively to paint the entire body of all 24 skeletons. Just slosh this paint on, allow it to pull up in the ribcage areas and in areas where you would like a bit of shading around the joints. Just allow it to pull up. You won't do any harm. It'll dry in a way that looks like bone. For me personally, this colour has been a lifesaver. In the olden days, I would have, built these colours up with various dry brushes and layers. Gone are those days as far as I'm concerned. This is much easier and it's much more fun. You get things done much quicker. There are of course people who love painting in the traditional way, and more power to them. I don't. I'm a gamer. I prefer to game. So to me it's get these things done as quickly as possible. Also, don't feel that you have to use my method of red spray then white spray for the primers. You don't. You can go just straight to white. It adds a bit of difference but not a vast quantity. Next colour up is going to be Hoplite Gold, and I'm going to use it for my spear tips and the chest plates and helmets on some of the figures, and the bands around the heads of some of the Tomb King skeletons. I'm being as neat as I can without worrying too much, because I am going to be fixing mistakes with the white paint before the next colour goes on, so it's not the end of the world if you hit things you're not supposed to hit. As I explained in a previous video, this is just strip wood that I've attached double-sided tape to, and then attached the skeletons to the double-sided tape. It holds them well enough. The next colour up I'm going to use is Talos Bronze, and I'm going to use it just to break the figures up a little bit colour-wise. The big skulls on the standards I'm going to paint using this, and also the little skulls dangling from the banners. This is a colour that could easily have been skipped and you wouldn't really have missed anything. I just chose to use it because it was sitting there and I fancied adding another colour to the miniatures. As I was saying, you don't need to copy my exact colour scheme, and you don't need to copy the exact way I do things. I'm just hoping that I give somebody somewhere an idea or a bit of self-confidence that you can do this. This army's really easy to paint. Now it's time for some dead white, and you can really use any white you've got. I just happen to have this pot sitting here, so that's what I'm going to use. It's a good thick white paint that gives good coverage. It does need diluted down if you're trying to do any intricate work with it, but when you're just patching up mistakes that you've made, you can use it neat if you want. Again, if you want to be really sloppy, you can miss this step and you can just paint straight over the top of the Pallid Bone colour, but you will get different tones coming through, so in order to keep the tones the same for the colours, I like to keep it a bare white, which is why you'll see me fixing my mistakes an awful lot. I'm happy to show you me fixing my mistakes. We all make mistakes. Everybody. Next colour up is going to be Slaughter Red, and I'm going to use it to paint all my spears. I'm also going to use it to paint parts of the banner and some areas of the shields, alternate areas of the shields. Not all the shields, just an occasional shield. At the end of the day, we're wanting to keep this process quick and easy, so we're going to take our time with the red and try and not hit any areas because we don't want to have to keep going back and repairing mistakes. It's not a big deal if we do have to go back and repair mistakes, it just adds more time to the process. You'll see here that it's quite easy to manipulate these models into any position you really need to. Even though there's a bunch of them attached to a piece of wood, they're held on strongly enough that you can turn them whatever way you have to in order to get at the angles you need to get at. If I was painting less models or even individual models, I would just use like an old paint pot with a piece of blue tack or double-sided tape with the model stuck to that. Make sure you're using a decent brush with a decent point. My advice is to have a bunch of brushes because they don't last forever, and once they start to splay out, the bristles start to splay out or they start to lose their point too much, you can start to make a lot of mistakes that you wouldn't otherwise make. My advice would be to either get that brush really well cleaned using a brush cleaning soap, or just use it as a dry brush or a glue brush and pick up a new brush. So when you're buying brushes, make sure you buy several. The most awkward part of these spears are obviously where the skeleton is holding it. Just paint as close as you can. You don't need to hit every area. Remember, most of this isn't going to be seen. This is one of my new favourite colours that I've came across from the Speedpaints range. It's Desolate Brown. It's kind of a greeny brown colour, and I'm going to use it for the wraps at the tops of the spears, the areas that you can see white. And I'm also going to use it for the wraps around some of the skeleton's arms. Basically as raggedy rags, for want of a better word. If you are going to use my method of batch painting, sticking your models to a piece of wood temporarily, remember to leave enough of a gap between the miniatures so you can get at all the angles that you need to get at when you're painting. Some people, and myself included in the past, have put their miniatures too close together, and all of a sudden you find you can't get into nooks and crannies. Next up, I'm going to use Caribbean Blue. It's a really nice pale blue colour. I'm going to use it for my shields, and I'm going to use it for areas of the banners and the pieces of cloth that hang off the sides of some of the skeleton's headgear. You'll see anyway here as I paint it. Because these colours are very opaque, you sometimes need 2 coats, or maybe even 3 coats sometimes, to get the nice solid colour that you want. That's really a personal preference, so just keep painting it until you're happy, and then call it good. As you can see, I have went for a speed paint version of the box art, as close as possible without going overboard and taking hours to do an individual miniature. I take my hat off to the people that can do that. I can't. I just want these things done and in their display case, ready for gaming. Now I'm going to follow the advice of a viewer. I'm going to try and mix up some basing material with some PVA, some sand, and some of the AK interactive basing, sand basing material. With hindsight, it was an okay experiment, but it wasn't really any quicker than my original method, and I'm not sure it produced better results than my original method of just using the AK basing material, then PVA over the top, a bit of sand, a wash, dry brush, done. I don't think taking the time to mix this up is really worth it, to be honest, so I'll probably just stick to my own method in future, although I'm always open to new ideas and open to learning new things. Keep the ideas coming, guys. Next up is going to be the Citadel colour Aggaros Dunes. It's a contrast paint, and I'm going to heavily dilute it to make it into a wash that I'm going to use simply to colour the bases of the models before I dry brush them with a lighter colour. One viewer had suggested adding this straight to the AK pot and mixing the AK basing material to the shade that you want. That would be a great idea, only I wouldn't know how much to mix in, and I don't really want to waste the AK material and this material finding out. With contrast paints being quite expensive and the AK interactive stuff being quite expensive, I'm just being a chicken at the minute and taking the safe method. Because it's such a thin wash, it's dried really quickly, and I'm now able to give the bases a dry brush. I'm going to use Screaming Skull from Citadel. It's a nice colour, very pale. Perhaps even a little too pale for sand, although it works okay, so I'm happy enough with it. If you have a better colour for sand, let me know in the comments, please. And now I'm on to the shields. I paint shields on the sprues if I'm able to. It just makes it far easier to hold them. They're very fiddly otherwise, and I like to paint both sides of the shield. It's a simple matter of snipping them off and touching up where the paint wasn't, obviously, because there were parts of sprue, but it only takes a few seconds. So I'm going to use the Hoplite Gold, and I'm going to paint in all the areas of the shield that I think should be gold. I'm going to be as neat as I can here, within reason. It doesn't matter too much if you hit the shield, because you're going to be pulling the white paint out and touching the shield up before you add the blue colour. So it's not the end of the world if you hit any areas that you don't mean to hit. Once you've finished using the gold paint, remember to pull the dead white, or whatever white you're using, out and touch up the white areas, getting as close as possible to the metal areas without hitting them. This is just to keep all the colours of the shield uniformed. Now for the backs of the shields, I'm going to use my Desolate Brown colour that I like. I think it's a suitable decaying wood type colour. That's just what I'm going to use, and it's going to be for the backs of the shields. Because this paint flows really well, it's almost like using a wash, although it has more control. So you can just load your brush and go to town on the white areas, and it'll flow into the recesses and into the corners up against the metal areas without staining the metal. Now for Caribbean Blue, I'm going to use this for all the shield fronts. It's going to take 2 to 3 coats. Just try to make your first coat as streak free as possible. This paint and all the speed paints like to leave streaks behind on large flat areas. So keep it moving and keep the brush going through it, and you will end up with some streaks, but I think it actually adds to the effect. But you don't want too many, and you don't want it pulling too much in one area. You'll see at the end the effect that I've achieved, and you can decide for yourself whether you want to try the speed paints or a contrast paint, or stick with a more traditional, thicker paint. These days we're definitely spoilt for choice with the amount of manufacturers and different paints that are available to us. And now I'm going to finish the bases off with some Tufts, and I'm going to use the Army Painter Highland Tufts and Deadlands Tufts, just because I want to break the bases up a bit, add a bit of depth and 3Dness to them, and I think they look better with some Tufts on them. These are not expensive, so make sure and pick a couple of packs up. There are other manufacturers obviously, but the Army Painter ones I quite like, and they're reasonably well priced. And now I'm going to use Coat d'Arms Tan Earth to edge my bases. Use whatever colour you like. I've put another example up in the corner there of a Vallejo Tan Earth colour. You might want black bases, you might want green bases, it's entirely up to you. I just like a light brown colour on the edges of my bases, at least for this army. And there we have it, the finished models. Well, this is 20 of them anyway. I'm showing you one command group. I painted both command groups at the same time. There was no point putting them both into the one unit, it would have looked a bit daft. So anyway, hopefully you like it, hopefully you've learned something, hopefully I have been of some use to somebody somewhere. Thank you for watching. Please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. There'll be more undead and old world content going up very soon. Thank you and have a great day.